Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, where it's all about creating the life you want, the business you want, and making a real difference. Join us in unlocking the code to true success. And now your host, Tony Caliendo, Master Coach with ReThink Coaching.
Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, episode number 131. I'm Tony Caliendo, Executive Coach here at ReThink Coaching. And as always, I just want to take a moment and thank you for sharing your time with me. Time truly is our greatest asset, and the fact that you're willing to share your time with me does mean a great deal. Today's topic is about friction. And, I had this realization for myself a few years ago, and it's come up as of late with a few folks that I have the privilege of coaching. And I think it's important for us to have a conversation around friction, good friction, the bad friction, what it could mean, and what it could look like for you. I know for myself, there have been times when things in my business are so on autopilot that it just feels really easy. And there are some things that should be like that. What I noticed and what caused this conversation with my coach was they noticed that so much was on autopilot that I wasn't being challenged. I wasn't being in a position of being really aware of what was happening. It was kind of that set it and forget it mentality that we have that can be good in some areas, especially administrative or tasks that are repetitive. However, it can also create a place to hide, a place to just ignore and to create this really false sense of security that everything is great, there's no friction, and we're missing key opportunities. I want to talk today about a few things for you to consider if you're a leader, if you are building your own business, if you are in the midst of having grown a team, whatever that looks like for you. I want to talk about the importance of friction and how that can really enhance your business and do the opposite of what we think. I think right now, the number one thing I want to talk about is that we tend to have this obsession with ease. We want to make things easier. I think about from a personal perspective, from a time management place, things like Amazon, things like shopping online from your favorite vendors, clothing, whatever it is, buying a car online, whatever it is, we've got this obsession that we want to make things easier. And technology has, in many ways, assisted in making things easier. Yet, I want you to think about this when it comes to your business. We've almost overcorrected toward comfort and are unintentionally avoiding the very pressure that builds our capability. That very pressure that got us to where we are now is somehow being erased because our perception is that everything should be easy. Everything should be as easy as going online and clicking and placing an order. That's just how we think all aspects of our business and life should be. Now, I'm not saying that leverage, automation, efficiency, that those things aren't powerful, because they are. And I'm not about not taking advantage of leverage, because there are certain activities that you should no longer do that are not worthy of your dollar per hour attention. However, we don't want to avoid the pressure that really builds our capability, and that pressure comes with friction. So just know leverage is great. And it also can be a distractor. This isn't really about, when I talk about the less over more framework that I built for my coaching, it's not about making everything easier. It was really just about removing what distracts the wrong more so that the right work can compound. It's about eliminating things that are no longer serving you, not about the friction that can come along with it. That is what I consider to be one of the things that helps generate our growth. Things that I see going away that maybe shouldn't are a reduction in the meetings that we participate or that we lead. And some of this comes from the perception that I don't need to do it anymore. And there's an old saying that I live by, and that is expect what you inspect. And for me as a leader, I'm involved in the important meetings because I need to make sure that we're talking about the things that are moving us forward, and that those meetings are productive, and those meetings are creating friction in what we do because that's a sign of growth. So it's not just about reducing the amount of meetings that makes us sound better at what we do and being more aware of our time. It's really missed opportunity to make sure that your team is still aligned, that they see that you're still connected and you care about what is happening, and that you still have a passion for what is going on and you are part of their growth. Ease is a tool. Growth still requires your engagement. I don't want us to get those two things confused. Things can be easier for us. They really can. Just make sure you're choosing the right things to make easier. So, not all friction that you experience is a waste. Some of it is where your capability and your capacity is actually built. And I think for many of us, we connect friction with pain. People want to move away from pain towards pleasure. And I think we've blended those two definitions together, that friction is pain, and it's not. They are two very different things. And I believe that those have become muddied definitions, which could be causing some of our stalled out growth, which is really what we're all here to do, is to continue to grow. The number two thing is that I believe there's two types of friction, right? There's good and not so good, or there's productive and destructive. So productive versus destructive friction. Our job's not to eliminate friction completely. It's to diagnose it correctly. So here's what I mean by destructive friction. It's what creates confusion and drains energy. It's that friction that isn't really helping you move forward. It just puts you in a space of confusion and zapped of your energy, versus productive friction, which is what I love. It sharpens our thinking skills and it raises our standards. It's productive. So an example of destructive friction can simply be that your team is constantly having to rework things because your expectations were not clear. Gosh, there's nothing more frustrating than, as a team member, working so hard, thinking that you are aligning with the expectations of your leader. Yet because they weren't clear, you only end up not achieving what was expected. That's not growth pressure. That's just simply noise. That is really a waste of time. I think back to my days in the hotel world when I worked for a boutique company, and the GM had an agenda that was public facing and then had a hidden agenda that they chose not to really share with us. As an executive team member, I was moving towards the public agenda. Ultimately, what I found out through destructive friction was I wasn't really following the agenda that he truly desired to have. And it really created a bunch of noise, because after being experiencing that I was following the wrong path, even though it was the projected path, I just viewed things as noise because it lacked clarity. Now, where you can create productive friction as a leader is having difficult conversations, giving really appropriate feedback to those that you lead, feedback that's strong to someone that you see maybe slipping or not living into the potential or not living into the commitments that they made. That's productive friction. The conversation might feel uncomfortable, yet it strengthens your organization. So having those conversations is the friction creator. It's having that, creating that awareness, or like I like to say as a coach, I like to enforce productive friction when I simply point out blind spots that the person I'm coaching is either ignoring or not willing to take a moment and to embrace that there's opportunity. Ultimately, productive friction is where growth happens. It's where we can see exponential growth for ourselves and for those that we lead. Less over more really is about removing destructive friction so productive friction can do its job. What I know to be true is most people aren't tired from friction. They're tired from the wrong friction. So making sure that you're building that space of productive friction that it actually is moving people somewhere or in the right direction is really, really important. So for me as a coach and as someone who leads an organization, I don't live for difficult conversations. That's not my goal. But my goal is to help people in seeing their true opportunity and to be brave enough or to care enough to have those conversations. It's what I call care in candor. I care about you enough to have the difficult conversation. I care about you enough to point out missed opportunity. I care about you enough to move you back in alignment with your job description and your goals and your true potential. That to me is productive friction. Ignoring it because you've put it on this set it and forget it, and you just assume everybody's doing great and doesn't need your set of eyes is really creating the destructive friction. I think what we have to realize sometimes as leaders is we have a skill that others may not have. Otherwise, they would be leading. And having that productive friction helps them grow. And you may be growing future leaders within your organization when you have those conversations. And there is nothing better in my life than identifying who is going to take your place and to be working with that person in their growth. And that comes from productive friction. I had the privilege of speaking at a conference a few weeks ago with Marriott International. And in speaking with the president who is transitioning out of his role into doing something different, we had the conversation and he identified his replacement about 18 months ago, maybe 24 months ago, and was working on helping that person grow into what they needed to be able to step into that position. That is productive friction. That's taking that person, seeing that potential, and helping them grow through challenging conversations, assigning them projects, giving them bigger tasks to complete to see how they can do on their path of growth. And I just love that. I know in my organization, I'm constantly looking to who could take my place. And having that in place helps me tremendously as I'm moving on to doing different projects. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. It just means I've got the support I need. And it has happened because I've been willing to have the conversations and get out of ease and into action. Number 3 is high performers will often over optimize, meaning driven people sometimes over engineer their world to avoid stretch or discomfort. High performers like to look for massive efficiencies. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. High performers love systems, predictability, and control. Those are strengths. Yet when we take it too far, when we take it to this total automation where I can be 1000% hands off, optimization actually becomes a subtle form of protection. Think about it. If you've built something to where you no longer have to even really give it any of your energy or any of your thought, you're not looking at it from a strategic perspective. You're just letting it do its thing and you're assuming all things will stay equal forever. When you are engaged, even in the things that you have optimized, systematized, whatever you have done to create predictability and control, you need to look at it and say, has anything changed since this system was created? Many times a company will outgrow the system that they put in place a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And when you just let it go on autopilot and you do not assess that as a leader or have those conversations, those friction conversations with the person responsible for that, you're missing tremendous opportunity because you're functioning on old data. You're functioning on data that's static. And if you're in a growth position, which I think we all are, there's constant moving targets that you need to be reassessing to make sure that we've got the right systems in place. So let's not just, remove friction. Let's make sure that we're removing the right friction because sometimes if you remove the wrong friction, you're also removing connection. And that connection can be to your team. It can be to an outcome. It can be to the reality of what's happening. I think about how fast things have changed with AI. And I think about within my company, the different things that we've been able to have AI help enhance positions, not eliminate, help enhance positions. If I wasn't willing to create friction in introducing this potential, we would not be using AI at the level that we're using it that helps us grow. And that's really, really important. Make sure that your reduction of involvement in the routine is really not avoidance or not making things simple and not keeping you in a position of growth and friction. Sometimes what will look like efficiency for you is actually just discomfort avoidance. And I want you to think about that, right? If we've got systems in place that we don't go back and visit, we're actually just avoiding discomfort of, oh my gosh, I got to go recreate that system again. Yes, you do, because things have changed. So don't confuse efficiency and discomfort avoidance. They will run parallel together. And if you do not become intentional about reassessing your growth and reassessing what you've put in place for leverage and growth, you could actually just be avoiding growth, right? Avoiding discomfort. There is a hidden cost, the number 4 thing, of a friction-free path. I think sometimes it just sounds lovely. I mean, I have to admit, it just sounds amazing to think about no friction, to think about just kind of gliding and coasting. And I remember a mentor of mine shared this with me a long time ago, and she was right. You can only coast for so long, right? If you're in momentum and you put like the car in neutral and you're in momentum, it will coast, but it will only coast until it reaches an obstacle or a hill. And you will stop moving forward and you'll start moving backward. There's really no such thing as just coasting. And I think that's the hidden cost of creating a friction free path. When everything feels easy, your edge can dull quietly. It's funny. I was having this conversation the other day. I live in a place where I don't have to drive very much anymore. And when I do, it's a mile here, 2 miles there, 3 miles, whatever. And then we live another part of the time and we spend another part of the time in bigger cities. And it's funny, like it never bothered me to drive and to do things, but now I have to pay a little bit more attention because if I don't continue to use this skill of driving in traffic jams, 6-lane freeways, I can actually lose my edge. And if it can happen in something as simple as driving, it can happen in all areas of your life. So just really take a minute to make sure that your decision muscles stay strong. And you do that through checking in. You do that by not avoiding friction. You do that by making sure your standards are the standards that you need, that they haven't changed. It's funny. I think people believe a lot of times we kind of set it and forget it with our standards. Yet as we grow and as we evolve and then the people that work for us evolve, we sometimes have to revisit those standards just to make sure that they're the right standards that will keep us in a position of forward motion and that we don't lose our focus. How can you not lose your focus if you move into this lane of ease, this friction-free path? You're going to lose your focus because you're not paying attention. You don't need to pay attention. Things are just on autopilot. If a leader builds such a comfortable operational machine that they stop initiating bold moves, there's a sign of missed opportunity. Revenue stabilizes oftentimes in that situation, right? Where you've got this machine that's just running things great. Your revenue is going to most likely stabilize, yet it can stop expanding. Nothing's broken, yet nothing is accelerating. That's the danger of living in a friction-free path. That's the danger of not revisiting things in your organization often and having the difficult conversations with yourself as a leader as to where can I apply some friction to ensure that we're continually moving forward. Don't remove the stretch. Don't remove the capacity that you have within you because you've created this friction-free path or this easy path forward. Comfort is not always neutral. It, to me, is directional. and it's usually directional in the wrong direction. When you get super comfortable with things, I've seen it happen. Growth stalls out, things slip away from you, opportunity slips away because you're not constantly growing and changing. And before you know it, you've lost your position in the world. You've lost your position in your industry. You've lost your position overall. Number 5 thing to consider is that friction is great feedback, right? Resistance often contains really great information. And so when you're feeling friction, especially if it's destructive versus productive, take a moment and really assess what is the friction that I'm feeling. Is it just a moment that I need to pause and assess? Because within that friction, failure, there's huge golden nuggets of opportunity. Have we reached an impasse where the friction is a skill gap? Like we had a skill that got us here and our next level is here, but we've stopped having the difficult conversations. We stopped challenging people to do things at a higher level. And we've created this gap in our skills because we just are relying on the easy, non-friction path. Is it a boundary issue? Is it, are we truly out of alignment at this point? Have we just taken our foot off the gas so much that we have fallen out of alignment? Make sure that you're really taking note of friction as a precision feedback, that there's really, really great things in it. If you have difficult conversations, right? So if you look at where you've got the friction that's not productive, and if it's a difficult conversation and it feels heavy with your team, the friction may be showing a leadership issue. What if you need to replace yourself? I remember listening to a really powerful CEO who said his company experienced the most amount of growth when he fired himself, when he replaced himself, because he only could get this to a certain level and he didn't have the skill set to get it to the next level. So if you're having difficult conversations with your team and they feel heavy, or you feel like you really don't know what to do, you're just trying to get them motivated to go do something, that friction really can be directed back to you as the leader. You might need to hire a coach. You might need to replace yourself. There's opportunity to pay attention to what the friction's causing. Number 6 thing equates to less over more friction filter, meaning, like I said, it's not about not having friction. It's about having the right friction. And I have 3 questions I ask myself when I'm looking at what is the friction, right? Is it the friction I want, or is it the friction I'm going to naturally avoid? So the number 1 question is this friction coming from complexity that I've created or growth I'm stepping into? Think about that. If it's from growth, great. That's awesome, right? That's the friction that we want. Number 2, is this friction draining my energy or developing my capability? Like friction that challenges you, friction that you're like, I'm going to bust through this and figure this out. That's really great friction versus it's just draining my energy. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad I got through the day and it's over. The number 3 question I ask is, if I remove this friction, would I become sharper or softer? And I love that, right? Friction, you think about how you sharpen a tool, sometimes the friction of a knife on a sharpening stone, that friction will eventually create a sharper tool. If we don't apply that friction, the knife gets dull. Same thing for you. If you're not applying friction, right? If you removed it, would you become sharper or softer? And to me, when we remove friction, we have a tendency to become softer. We have the tendency to just lean back into what we know is easier and can work for us versus pushing us to the next level. Your next level, speaking of, your edge is built, it's not protected. Our goal is not always a perfectly smooth plan. Rarely is it ever. And it's going to be full of friction points along the way. Yet our goal is to be aligned with productive friction, with the friction that keeps us growing. I want you to think about what if you took a step back and assessed your business and identified inappropriate friction and asked yourself, if you removed that and took the time that is taking from you and applied that friction to productive friction, what would it do? I mean, what if you took and looked at your talented team and removed the lower friction that was really just causing you to be zapped of energy, not getting to goal, that was destructive, and you remove those things, less over more, and you took that friction and applied it to productive friction. Challenging people, I love this. I'm blessed with a great team. And what I enjoy is being able to create friction for them because that challenges them to greater capacity. So take a peek at your business and find out where you can realign friction and realign the right type so that it is having everybody in your organization leaning into their capability, to their capacity, and showing up as the best version that they can show up. Friction's a great thing, team. We may have become over automated and removed so much of it that we're actually causing stagnation in our business. And that is not what we want to do. We want to remove the wrong kind and plus the right kind. I hope this is helpful for you and you're going to think about things a little bit differently. That's really my challenge, is just get you to think about things that you maybe have never considered. A lot of us think friction-free is success, and I'm here to tell you it's not. Not all. Some is, yet if you don't have some level of friction in your life, in your business, you're just not growing. It's really that simple. So I'm going to say this with a lot of love and compassion. Go create some friction today and challenge yourself. Get back to that capability. Get back to that capacity. Create more space in your world for great things to show up, and the friction can get you there. Make it a great week. We'll talk to you soon. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you must come check out the Mindset Architect Group Coaching Program. It's our monthly program where we explore the power of your mindset, help you identify what you truly want in business and life, and then help you reach those goals. Come check us out at rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. That's rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. We'll see you there.